Good afternoon, everybody. Jonas Schwartz in SNY's Midtown Studios. We interrupt our regularly scheduled programming to bring you the news that Jeurys Familia was arrested on a warrant of domestic violence in northern New Jersey. It was first reported by NorthJersey.com. I have the complaint in front of me, and it basically says that the police found specifically a scratch to the chest and a bruise to the right cheek of the victim, where a law enforcement officer responding to the incident found probable cause to believe that domestic violence had occurred in violation of New Jersey Statute 2C12(1)A. Obviously, this is news that the Mets were not going to be thrilled to hear. They have released a short statement saying, in essence, that they were aware of the situation. The matter was brought to our attention and that they are monitoring the situation, as you can see right there. Let's bring in SNY baseball analyst and insider Andy Martino, also senior writer for the Daily News. Andy, just right off the bat, and I understand we never know what goes on behind closed doors, but you know Jeurys Familia. How surprising is this news?
Well, Jonas, certainly based on interactions that I've had with this guy for really years now, your first reaction is, disappointment for a victim, of course, and for him and for his family, if this is indeed true. But yeah, surprised. Jeurys Familia, you couldn't find a nicer, more pleasant, young guy in terms of the way he interacts out in the world with media, with teammates, coaches, managers, fans. But as I'm sure you know, and everyone out there realizes, we don't really know what goes on in other people's homes and private lives, and this is just another reminder, whether Familia is guilty of this or not. It's easy to see somebody in public and see one side of them and really have no idea what their marriages are like or home lives are like. And it's just another reminder of that. We've been faced with that, of course, in sports quite a bit lately. It's a depressing reality, and possibly in this case and certainly in many others that we've found. We just don't know the full complexity of human beings that we see compete and we talk to in the locker room.
Well, I believe also, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Familia is part of Major League Baseball's campaign against domestic violence. Is that right?
Yeah, he was in an ad campaigning against domestic violence, and that just adds another layer to this, of course, which is depressing if these allegations turn out to be true. But just the complexity of people. Who knows what the full story is here? Who knows what kind of moment this was in a man's life and a family's life? I think it's easy to have partial facts and out there in the public and start accusing people of this or that. But it's just people obviously have very complicated private lives, only some of which we get to see in public.
It's also important to note that in these situations, as we've seen with Jose Reyes, charges are often dropped, but Major League Baseball has the right to act whether there's a conviction or whether charges are brought regardless. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that is correct, Jonas. In this past season with Aroldis Chapman and Jose Reyes, was the beginning of MLB's new domestic violence program, and the penalties were pretty harsh, and they did not require convictions in courts of law or full cooperation with law enforcement. So one would imagine that Major League Baseball's investigations unit would be all over this, looking into the situation and determining what kind of suspension to consider for Jeurys Familia, which in some ways has proven to be more severe than what law enforcement has brought.
Well, and it's interesting because the punishment is totally at the discretion of Major League Baseball. If you look at Aroldis Chapman, 30 games, and Jose Reyes, 51 games. So there's no, and we don't know if anything is good. Let's be clear, we don't know if anything will be brought, but just hypothetically looking down the road, if something were, there's no way to read what that suspension could be if there's a suspension brought in any way, shape, or form down the road.
True, Jonas, other than the fact that when MLB has levied these suspensions so far, they've made a point of making them severe and impacting both the player's paycheck in a severe way and the team's ability to use that player over a good long chunk of the season. So Major League Baseball, seeing what has happened with the NFL, being criticized for being too lenient on domestic violence, MLB has made a huge point of showing in the past year that these are going to be real suspensions when they do get levied.
Now, you know Sandy Alderson well, you know people in the front office very well. Because of this news today, are they already thinking in their minds, are they already preparing themselves for some kind of suspension, even though we don't have any idea whether one will be brought? Are they already preparing for that event, that possible eventuality?
Well, everything that I've understood, Jonas, and this takes us right up to reporting that I've done very, very recently, that the Mets are planning on having Jeurys Familia as a closer next year. That doesn't sound like a shock because he's been in that role, but there has been some talk with Familia's playoff struggles the last 2 years. Do you bring in a Kenley Jansen, or do you bring in, not to add to the baggage here of this topic, but an Aroldis Chapman or somebody like that to close for the Mets as they're in their championship window, if you will, here. But the plan has been to continue with Familia, keep him as a guy, have Addison Reed setting him up, and that I would be very surprised if that changed, even based on the prospect of a suspension. I don't think that the Mets would sign a big-time closer to a multi-year deal, even if they were to expect to lose their closer for a month or two. It doesn't seem like the way they typically operate.
Well, you obviously also realize and know people in the front office ownership. Do you think they've been paying attention? So much criticism with the Giants and the Josh Brown situation. Of course, every situation is different, but still the Giants' response and handling of it has been taken note of by just about everybody, every sports fan in the tri-state area. You think the Mets have likely watched how that has been handled and will go about this differently?
Certainly they're aware of it. The Mets monitor media reactions as they should to all these kinds of things, and they, I'm sure, will make an effort to not have that happen to them as what happened to the Giants in terms of that fumbling, inconsistent way the Giants handled Josh Brown. But remember, of course, the Mets do have experience with this issue within the past calendar year when they signed Jose Reyes. And frankly, Jose Reyes got a standing ovation in his first game with the Mets, which seemed to send a clear signal to the front office that the fans are more concerned with performance. Now, I don't want to generalize an entire fan base here, but Jose Reyes got that standing ovation, and if you're the Mets, you're thinking that this PR storm and their experience has not been too severe.
Oh, of course, that also happened after he served his suspension and his punishment had been dealt out by Major League Baseball. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Andy, we appreciate a few moments. We will speak to you soon.
All right, thanks, Jonas.
All right, senior writer for the Daily News, Andy Martino. Just to recap here, Jeurys Familia arrested early Monday morning. Domestic violence complaint. Once again, want to read to you from the warrant of the arrest, where the officer noticed specifically, and I'm quoting here, a scratch to the chest and bruise to the right cheek of the victim, where a law enforcement officer responding to the incident found probable cause to believe that domestic violence had occurred. We will have much more on this story coming up throughout the evening here on SMY. 5 o'clock, Daily News Live, 5:30, Loudmouth, and of course, Geico Sports Night will take you through this evening starting at 10:30. So that'll do it for us for now. Let's send you back to our regularly scheduled programming.